Welcome to Rants and Reason. I am Chuck.
I am Karen.
I am a liberal.
And I am a conservative. And as Abraham Lincoln reminds us, we are not enemies, we are friends.
We are friends. We're going to do a Meme Monday. Do you have anything you need to rant about first, Karen?
I don't have a rant. I just want to say Happy Father's Day to you and every other person out there celebrating Father's Day. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. I had a great Father's Day.
That's
I got
good.
to eat pizza, so.
Hey, it's always a good thing.
And
All
chocolate chip cookies, a win-win.
Hey, that is a win-win. So, are you ready to do this?
I am.
All right, let's go. Well, this meme shows a picture of President Trump with the words, "Starts trade war to decrease trade deficit. Trade war increases trade deficit." So we've got tariffs, trade wars, and deficits. First, Trump is partly right about existing trade policy. China does have unfair trade practices. U.S. trade policies and some changes are necessary. However, which policies the president attacks and how he tries to change them is important. Flawed methods usually produce flawed results. In this case, the problem is more than a flawed method. It's actually flawed economics. In other words, Trump sees the problem clearly. He's pretty good at diagnosing problems, wouldn't you say, Chuck? I mean, that's sort of what got him.
That's what got him elected.
Right. I mean, he's very
the problems. I thought him and Bernie Sanders did the best job of diagnosing the problems.
Right, and that resonated with the people. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing that a lot in everything that people get outraged about. They're able to identify problems, but when it comes to offering solutions, that's a lot slimmer pickings. But
yes. Oh, absolutely.
Right. Well, Trump had bad solutions and the wrong basic economic worldview. He thinks the world is divided into winners and losers. So if you're not winning on every deal, then you're automatically getting cheated and you're a loser. Well, okay, that sounds logical to some people, but it's just really not how economics works. In fact, America actually benefits from some trade deficits. Sometimes in world economics, what Trump calls losing is actually winning.
Yeah, and one of the ways I heard this explained is if the only thing you can survive on is kale, and the only thing you can raise is beef, but you can't grow kale, and you have to buy more kale than you send beef over to the other country, you have a trade deficit, but you're still winning.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you? Because you're alive. Because you can only eat kale.
Right. No, yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying. I think a lot of people would take issue with the fact that you're saying that surviving on kale would be winning, but
yeah, death would be preferable. Yes.
Not to me. I love kale. I think it's very, very funny that when I was growing up, people thought like kale and mustard greens were like poverty food, and now kale is this trendy thing, and I just think it's really funny because growing up I ate a lot of kale, but it's because we couldn't afford other food. It wasn't because kale was cool, but now it's cool. I just think it's funny.
Well, mustard greens are weeds. That is one thing.
They're delicious with beans and cornbread.
He would make greens with almost every meal, fried potatoes with almost every meal. It's amazing that I didn't have a heart attack at 20.
I had fried potatoes tonight.
Yeah, and I realized that the greens were just weeds that he was putting bacon grease on and making them taste good.
Well, I ate them without the bacon grease, so I actually really like them. But anyway, getting on with the
yeah.
point.
Well, what we're talking about, and what you hear a lot in the news, is the tariffs that we're going to impose on countries. And
right.
What is a tariff? Basically, it's a tax we charge on goods coming into the country. Why is that important? Well, higher tariffs mean that in the end, American consumers, you and I, are going to pay more for certain goods. And we're not going to be able to go down to Walmart and get the cheap TVs for $179. The prices are going to go up. Now, why would he want to do that? If we drive up the prices of goods from some countries, we'll either buy it from other countries or produce the product here. Trump believes that the countries he hits with tariffs would rather buy more goods from us than endure those losses. More American profits means balancing trade deficits with those countries. Why does he hate these deficits so much? Because America spends overall more buying imports than it makes selling exports. Now that sounds bad because having money is good, but having stuff like TVs is also good. Okay, having stuff like books is
yes, good. Books is good. Yes, books are good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Americans can afford to buy books, especially from foreign countries, which is often cheaper.
So why do we spend money importing so much? Well, we're really profitable at some things, like the financial, agricultural, and software sectors, but we're much less profitable at others, like clothing. We happen to be really good at the most expensive stuff. That is called our comparative advantage. This really means that it's smarter to let other countries spend their time and money making the things that we are not as profitable at, like clothing, because we can then spend our time and our money maximizing the things that we're the best at, the most profitable at, like software. Industries always change. Some industries will shrink. And we're seeing that with manufacturing, and some will grow, technology and services. It all depends on where our comparative advantage lies.
So we do lose jobs to other countries, and in the wrong places and times that can devastate local economies, especially when you're losing manufacturing.
Right.
But at the same time, it has benefits for corporations. They make more money and we get better deals. And our unemployment rate is incredibly low.
Right. And I think it's really interesting. You know, a lot of people talk about manufacturing, but really it's our own technology innovation that has put some of the manufacturing jobs out of business. So we've kind of done that to ourselves in some areas. So I think that's one thing to consider as well. I mean, we either think innovation is good or not. We have to remember that.
And what they're basically saying is, with our unemployment being so low, we have a certain number of workers. Mm-hmm. Do you want them making clothing that's very non-profitable, or do you want them making jets?
Right, right.
That's our comparative advantage.
Right. Well, losing money is good for the economy. Okay, so we don't actually lose money. We spend it on stuff. And when you and I spend money, the American economy does well. In fact, the economy just grew by nearly 4% in the last quarter. But the biggest factor of this was consumer spending. If prices go up thanks to a trade war, we're not going to buy as much, and that will hurt us. This is one reason our small trade deficit can be good. Other countries may get our dollars, but we get their stuff.
And you would think we want to keep our dollars. Don't we want to keep them? Don't we want to buy American? Well, we don't want all of our dollars. Other countries use our dollars to reinvest in America. We need this because we don't make enough on taxes, which we just cut. And we have to borrow money to meet the deficit. And we have a massive national debt right now. So we have to keep borrowing money. So we want those people like China to have dollars so we can borrow them to meet our deficits. Doesn't seem to make sense, but
no.
Until we get the debt under control, that's what we have to do.
Right.
Now, our economy is growing. We currently have the strongest economy in the world by far, despite these deficits, and the president even likes to brag about this. So, is he wrong? He's not wrong about deficits, but there's really no trade crisis and no need to start a trade war right now.
Why are trade wars even bad? Well, we can't really depend on only our economy to provide us with everything we need or want at a reasonable cost.
Like kale.
Yeah, There you go. Higher costs for materials also means higher costs for goods that use those materials. Therefore, a trade war will cause prices on many everyday items to go up no matter what. Like think about the aluminum on soda cans.
Exactly.
Also, when we start trade wars with major economies such as China or Europe, we'll disrupt the global supply chain. And this means it will take longer to get stuff that costs more. And that's not just us. It's going to affect a lot of countries that aren't involved. If we get in a trade war with too many trading partners or with the wrong trading partners, such as our allies or China, then the countries we sell most of our stuff to today may choose not to buy our stuff in the future. People who live in a country with a strong nationalist streak, like China, might even boycott American products. And those without nationalist streaks, such as Canada, may decide that as well, right?
Well, Canada's already getting a nationalist streak, and they're deciding to boycott American products.
Right. I don't even think that has anything to do with a nationalist streak.
Well, no, they're just, I mean, you have to work hard to make Canadians mad.
I know.
And we've done it.
Yeah. Well, we can't stop other countries from trading with each other. They'll continue growing. That means we'd either have fewer places to sell the stuff we make, or we'd sell our exports for less profit. So it's really a very vicious cycle. Yes, a trade war might very well increase our trade deficit. And not only that, it will increase it on the sales side. We won't be putting more dollars into other countries, which means they won't have as many dollars to invest in us.
So basically how this affects you, it's going to raise prices for imported products right away. Costs are going to rise by the same amount as the imposed tariff. If we put a 25% tariff on kale, kale's going to go up 25%. It's going to give a competitive advantage to domestic producers of that product if they can produce it. Now, their prices will be lower by comparison because they don't have that 25% tariff. As a result, they receive more orders from local customers, and as businesses grow, they add jobs. All sounds good, right? Yeah. The flip side to that, domestic manufacturers rely on imported raw materials or parts, and we're going to see higher costs than those. It's going to cut into their profitability, and they're either going to have to raise prices, cut jobs, or both.
Foreign tariffs on U.S. exports will make them more expensive. U.S. exporters may have to cut costs and lay off workers to remain competitively priced. If they fail, they may cut costs further or even go out of business. So in the long term, trade wars slow economic growth. They create more layoffs, not fewer, as foreign countries retaliate. The 12 million U.S. workers who owe their jobs to exports would get laid off. Over time, trade wars weaken the protected domestic industry. Without foreign competition, companies within the industry don't need to innovate. Eventually, the local product would decline in quality compared to foreign-made goods. We need innovation, so...
We do, and these things really fly in the face of free markets and capitalism that everybody talks about.
Right.
These tariffs. I mean, they're hard to understand. And I read a really good article by Roger Solinger who kind of spelled it out very plainly. And so we were able to put this together because
you did a great job putting it together.
Neither of us are economics.
No. Disclaimer. We are not economists.
We are not economists.
You've been disclaimed.
You've been disclaimed. Karen can't even do basic math most of the time.
So. I know. I understand economics more than I do just basic general math. Yeah. So.
Taking all this into consideration, we rate this meme.
True.
And that is all we have to say about that.
We would like to thank everyone who takes the time to listen to us. As usual, you can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, and iTunes. We'd really appreciate you dropping us a positive review on one of those platforms or on our page.
Absolutely. And you can follow us on Twitter at Rants Reason. We appreciate all of our Patreon supporters, and you can find us on Patreon as Rants and Reason if you decide we are worthy of $2 a month.
Yes, which we would greatly appreciate.
Yes, we would.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.